Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. Nearly 330 million Americans are holding their breath as billions across the world watch on. The U.S. presidential election has come down to the wire. In normal times, anxiety over the eventual winner wouldn't be as high. But amidst a global pandemic and a candidate who has broken countless presidential norms, a tense atmosphere has taken hold. Whoever ends up becoming the next U.S. president could see a weakened mandate, a divided Congress, and a world unsure of the U.S.'s leadership role. What could that mean for Washington's relations with Ankara and U.S. foreign policy? And to answer that, joining me from Istanbul is Matthew Bryza. He is a former U.S. ambassador. And also from Istanbul, Hakan Akbas, who is a senior advisor at the Albright Stonebridge Group, which is a global business strategy firm. So, gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. With the U.S. presidential vote hanging on a knife's edge, the Trump campaign has filed lawsuits in several battleground states to halt vote counting. And then Trump also claimed a premature victory and has made several false claims. So, Matthew, has the United States seen anything like that before? And what could it do to the U.S.'s credibility and standing in the world?
I've never imagined that any U.S. president could make statements like those. I was raised in school and, in my professional life that voting is our patriotic duty and that all of us should encourage everybody to vote. So to have a president in the middle of an election discouraging counting of the vote after having discouraged people from voting for months and now claiming that the election was fraudulent because so many ballots were mailed in, that's really the worst set of statements I've ever heard by an American president. And it's actually on the border of sedition, which is a felony that's on the edge of treason, I think. So it's a very bad moment. I think that his statements very much damage the reputation of the United States in terms of being a democracy. On the other hand, the system's working.
Yes.
His court cases thrown out, right? And this army of volunteers has processed without any true allegations of fraud or misconduct, the highest number of votes ever in American history.
So, Hakan, Biden has a strong lead, but it's not officially over yet. Given how close the election was, will Biden have a weakened mandate, especially when it comes to foreign policy, if he becomes president?
Well, certainly, we will also need to see the outcome of the Senate race, which will be decided, looks like, in January now.
Yes.
And depending upon the outcome, obviously, Biden first will need to preside over a divided, almost 50-50 divided country first. And he will need to also reach out to America's sort of longstanding partners, whether it's the EU, whether it's the partners in the Middle East, and he will be going back to some of the Obama term deals, whether it's the Iran's P5+1 nuclear deal. So he's going to have his hands full, first domestically and then getting to the foreign affairs.
Yes.
But without any counts, this was a historic election.
So Republicans are likely to hold the Senate, Matthew. What would a divided Congress mean for U.S. policies, especially if Biden becomes president? Will he be able to push through his agenda, such as public options for U.S. healthcare, insurance, investment for green energy, for example? What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, first, in terms of foreign policy, I don't think the fact that the Republicans may keep the Senate will have really any impact because in the U.S. system, it is the president that really runs foreign policy, although his appointments have to be confirmed by the Senate and a vote to go to war has to be confirmed by the Senate as do treaties. Mm-hmm. In terms of his domestic agenda, it's a totally different story. Yeah, I think what you just mentioned, the Green New Deal, the public option for healthcare, there's no chance of those going forward, or defunding the police, zero. If the Republicans do retain control of the Senate, as Hakan said, after the special elections that'll happen in January, the runoff elections, I think that we'll see further gridlock and political warfare. And, I think we'll see Donald Trump maneuvering to return to office and run in 2024, and he will be the head of the Republican Party de facto, and
Yes.
he will be always.
So regardless of the U.S. presidential election outcome, do you believe Trump's legacy will live on? Hakan, are there any concerns that if Trump isn't president anymore, that he could be a force in U.S. policy, whether it be trade ties with China, whether it comes to Iran and other trade deals around the world?
Well, as you alluded to, Trumpism will outlive Trump's first term in the office. No question that he has run a cultural war with his constituents, and the results, both from a turnout perspective as well as the outcome perspective, shows the outcome. I mean, Democrats were hoping for a blue wave, and they ended up getting a very close election with almost 68 million votes for Trump. So he must have done something right. So going forward, Biden will have to, get back to the, I would say, the traditional alliances that had preceded Trump's term, whether it's the Trans-Pacific Alliance in Asia, whether it's the, sort of remotivating the EU platform and going back to Turkey's longstanding allies like Turkey and try to warm up the relations and I would even say rehabilitate the relations.
So what would a Biden victory would specifically mean, Matthew, for U.S.-Turkey relations moving forward?
I think at the beginning it would mean a bumpy road. Donald Trump has cushioned the U.S.-Turkey relationship against Turkey's opponents, especially in the United States Senate. They had passed the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or CAATSA, under which President Trump is required to apply sanctions against Turkey because of the S-400 issue. Yeah. And he's just refused to do so. He just didn't do it. If he's gone, then you can imagine Joe Biden as president would immediately impose those sanctions, I think. Biden has, for a long, long time, tilted in the opposite direction of Turkey when it comes to Kurdish issues, whether it's the YPG in northern Syria, or even way back when. Remember, after the second war in Iraq, he wrote a famous op-ed in the New York Times that talked about maybe breaking up Iraq into three cantons, one Sunni, one Shia, and one Kurdish. And then he's traditionally been close to Greek American and Armenian American lobbies, who obviously are no friends of Turkey. But after a little time were to go on, knowing him, having worked directly with him, with then Senator Biden, I know he's a systematic, strategic thinker. For him, NATO is the center of all U.S. security, and Ukraine is really important. He was President Obama's point man on Ukraine after Russia invaded. So this recent agreement between Ukraine and Turkey on military technology co-production, I think he's going to see that that's a very useful tool for the United States to contain Russia's aggressive behavior in the Black Sea region.
So regardless of who wins the elections, Hakan, what are the main areas the U.S. and Turkey should cooperate on? Matthew just mentioned the sticking points between the two countries, like the S-400s and the U.S. support for YPG terror organization, which I'm going to touch on later. So what steps to take and what's the next administration will do?
With Biden being a long-timer senator, as well as representing the establishment in the U.S., obviously we would have a more institutionalized relations between the two countries. Unlike in the Trump's term, it was really a personal access to President Erdogan, as well as a lot of ups and downs, which sometimes created a lot of problems in Ankara. So going forward, obviously, Mr. Biden will be pragmatic and also will look for common strategic interests for both countries. Having said that, neither he or Trump would change certain facts, like China is going to be the enemy, and I think Iran also is still the common enemy. But how Biden would go about it would be fundamentally different than Trump. And also, for example, for the East Med, I think given how close President Erdogan and Biden were in the last years of the Obama's second term, and how many times he's been to Turkey and to Cyprus, him knowing really the issues of both sides and how he can sort of bring
Yes.
the impartial U.S. to the party to bring diplomacy and hopefully an agreement back. So I'm hopeful that in certain way that this will be a more stable relations. Our parties can really focus on the issues rather than all the adrenaline that comes with the ups and downs from Trump.
So, Matthew, again, if Biden wins, some of the names that have been floated as possible secretaries of state include Anthony Blinken, Phil Gordon, and Susan Rice. She views the YPG as a dear friend of the United States. What would that mean for Turkey's fight against the terror organizations, the PKK in Iraq and YPG in Syria moving forward?
Yeah, it was under Susan. I mean, I say Susan because we were college classmates, so or Ambassador Rice. This policy of renaming the YPG into the Syrian Democratic Forces, knowing full well that they are the PKK. It's not like they're a branch of the PKK. They are the PKK. That was disingenuous, and so Ambassador Rice was at the center of all of that. But then Vice President Biden didn't resist. I mean, he's the number 2 person in the administration. So, that's a problematic situation. And I think, if it's Phil Gordon, who I worked for in the State Department, he was very fond of Turkey, still is. The problem is, and so is Tony Blinken, but the problem is that, I don't know a nice way to say this, but the brand of Turkey is toxic in Washington right now. I can't overestimate how many people are angry at Turkey in the Congress, in think tanks. I think mistakenly, I think they don't understand the issues at hand, and they conflate supporting the YPG or partnering with the YPG with working with an ally or with like supporting all of the Kurds, when in effect, this is a terrorist organization as recognized by the U.S. vis-a-vis the PKK. But that's the conventional wisdom in Washington right now. So again, I think it's going to be a very rough road in the beginning. Yes. But as Hakan was saying, I think at the end of the day, a President Biden will be much more conventional and will play according to the system that makes U.S. foreign policy. There'll be a more predictable relationship, but it will be predictably negative in the beginning.
Yeah, so Hakan, the NATO alliance and the European Union countries have suffered under the Trump administration. How would Biden's presidency impact the U.S.'s relations with both NATO allies as well as the European countries?
Without any doubt, both platforms would be glad to see President Biden back, and especially when it comes to NATO, there was a lot of doubt whether that once Trump wins, he would actually disband. He could disband or exit NATO like he did Paris, climate alliance. So from that perspective, I think everybody's relieved. And as far as the EU and US relations now with Brexit sort of being at the brink and the future being uncertain, obviously that will be also an interesting dilemma that Mr. Biden will need to take on. But without any doubt, this would be Biden's presidency would be also a positive news for Turkey's longstanding admission to EU, because Mr. Biden had characterized EU as a Christian club, which needs to admit Turkey to be able to make the case that it's actually not. So we will also, going forward, see probably, as I said, U.S. still being disenfranchised in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, because I don't see, the U.S. military going back in bigger numbers, those geographies. So whether it's Trump or Biden, that shouldn't also make a big difference, provided that, again, Ankara would find a president that can at least have an understanding either way. And yes. I work with Phil Gordon, and I think that if he could be, for example, if he would be the state of foreign affairs, that would be at least welcome from the perspective of he understands what's going on in Turkey. But as Matthew said, Turkey's brand is extremely toxic, especially in the Congress, which Turkey needs to address.
So, Matthew, Biden has said the U.S. should lead again. So if he becomes president, are we going to see a more globally motivated and assertive Washington, maybe, again, interventionist?
Huh. That's an interesting way to put it. I mean, for me, America leading again is a really good thing and doesn't need to be interventionist or disruptive. In my part of the world that I focus so much of my career on, Russia and its neighborhood, I think it's the lack of U.S. leadership since the Obama administration that has opened the way. And even under George W. Bush, I mean, with the Russian invasion of Georgia in 2008, it's the fact that U.S. didn't lead and didn't pull together a coalition to make clear to Russia that that is unacceptable behavior. That has led then to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in the Black Sea. So I think we will see much more traditional U.S. foreign policy under Biden. I think it will be a case of exerting leadership, but also leadership in terms of, as Hakan said, going back to the JPCOA, the so-called Iran nuclear deal, rejoining the climate change Paris Agreement.
Yes.
Has to lead by being part of those organizations, rejoining the WHO.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. I appreciate it a lot. France's relations with most of the Muslim world remains tense following anti-Islamic statements by French President Emmanuel Macron. His defense of the right to publish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad set off a wave of boycotts against French products. By last count, France's trade with the Muslim world stood at $100 billion. Macron's attempt to soothe that anger was on display during an interview he did with Al Jazeera. But was it enough to undo the damage he has done to his credibility? And to discuss that and the growing threat of anti-Islamic sentiments across the world, I'm joined by the Human Rights Minister of Pakistan, Shireen Mazari. She is joining us from Islamabad. Hello, Ms. Minister. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. So the rift between Muslim nations and France is growing tense after French President Macron's offensive remarks about Islam. So we also know that a majority of Muslim countries decided to boycott French products. How has that played out so far, and is it enough?
Look, the problem is that we are finding that the Europeans are discriminating against their own citizens who happen to be Muslims. Now, this is unacceptable. And even according to European laws, for example, the Human Rights Convention of Europe, Article 10, freedom of expression and speech are limited. And to discriminate against Muslims because of some extremists becoming violent is absolutely absurd. There has to be respect for all religions. Even in a secular society, you can't identify one group of religious people and discriminate against them. It is just as in Europe, you cannot even historically question the Holocaust. It's a crime. In the same way, it should not be permitted in any country to hurt a big section of their own citizens' religious sentiments, religious beliefs, by abusing our Prophet, peace be upon him, and by burning our holy book, the Quran, or by desecrating our mosques, our places of worship, or not allowing Muslim women to wear the dress of their choice.
So what kind of mechanism
that has been going on since 9/11?
We know that, but what kind of mechanisms should be employed to fight anti-Islam sentiments and anti-Islam rhetoric, both across Europe and some parts of Asia?
I think that the Muslim world together as a collectivity must demand from Europe that they give equal rights and equal protection to all their citizens. This should be one thing. Secondly, the leadership, whether it's France or Austria or anywhere else, they should make clear that if they are taking action against any violent terrorist, be it he happens to be a Muslim or any other religion, that it does not imply that they target the whole religious community of Muslims in their countries. We need to put pressure on the Europeans to live up to their own laws, to live up to their own European
How are you
conventions.
planning
I
to
think
put that
this
pressure?
message
How are
has
you
to go
planning
out
to put
very
that pressure
strongly.
on the European countries?
Pakistan's Prime Minister has written to all the Muslim leadership that they need to, for one, as a collectivity, make their position clear and make certain demands to the Europeans, and also look at economic issues, whether it's sanctions, whether it's boycott of goods. It has to be done by the collectivity of the Ummah. One country can't decide to boycott French goods. That doesn't work.
Yes.
We need to also, our Prime Minister has asked the UN Secretary General to have one day in March as a day to, against Islamophobia.
Yes.
We need to speak with one voice.
But Ms. Mazari, you're talking about speaking with one voice, but just recently the Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates has called on Muslims to accept calls from the French President Emmanuel Macron about the need for Muslims to integrate. What is your take on that? And was the timing of this statement off?
I think it's unfortunate that one Muslim country decided to go it alone. I think if there is going to be any meaning in the concept of the OIC, in the concept of the Ummah, then all Muslim countries must speak with one voice. And we should also show in our countries that we are respecting and protecting Christian churches, Christian populations. A country like Pakistan even allows Christians their own personal laws. So I think we need to work on both fronts. The difference on acceptance of other religions in our societies and the discrimination against Muslims in European countries. And the other thing is, I think Muslims in those countries need to use legal means in those countries to challenge the government's actions. Because there are a number of areas in which the Muslim citizens in France, for example, can challenge French laws. If there is a law that there will be no religious symbolism, then Muslims, French Muslims should go to the courts in France and demand, why are nuns allowed to wear the habit in public places? Why are priests allowed to wear their religious clothes in public places, but Muslim women can't wear the niqab?
Okay.
I think Muslims have to get together, become more participatory in the politics of their countries, and also use the legal frameworks of those countries to challenge discrimination.
So, Ms. Mazari, okay.
While Muslim countries can put pressure, Muslims within those countries must also become a strong pressure group.
So as for the human rights violations, could you speak to us about the latest in the Indian-occupied Jammu Kashmir?
Well, you know, last August, India illegally tried to annex occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Then it's become the largest open prison, because even now there is a lockdown, although they don't say there is, but restrictions are there on movement. There is no proper aid and assistance that can go in food, in medical supplies. And now the worst thing that the Indians are doing is trying to change the demography of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And this is actually a war crime under the 4th Geneva Convention, which India is a party to. And the sad part is that the international community is staying silent. And I want to express my special appreciation to the leadership of Turkey and the Turkish nation, which has really come forward with clarity in supporting the rights of the Kashmiris, in condemning Indian fascism under the Modi government in occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
So India has lately introduced a new land law. What does this plan entail, and what Pakistan is doing to prevent that?
We are taking it up in different international forums. What India is basically trying to do is to actually totally destroy the Kashmiri people, the Kashmiri population. They want to change the whole demography, the whole sort of population of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They're doing exactly what Israel is doing in Palestine, and they're doing exactly what the Nazis did in Germany and in other European countries that they invaded.
Human Rights Minister of Pakistan, Shireen Mazari, thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Aisha Subarkash. If you've got any comments, follow us and tweet us at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.